happy Wednesday to you. Now, I mentioned, I think once before, I'm on some kind of record pace with in terms of uploading YouTube video podcast for the general YouTube public. Yeah, because today is June 17th. This will be, I think, my ninth video in a 2.5 week period. Now, for some content creators on YouTube, that's no big deal. There's YouTube content creators that upload videos literally every day, at minimum 4 or 5 days a week, every week. Whereas, as I mentioned before, since I've been on YouTube in early April of 2017, my overall average is about 2 videos a week. I said over the last 3+ years, my overall average is about 2. Did I say 3? I meant to say 2. 2 videos a week. There's been a few weeks where I've done more. Some weeks I've done less. But yeah, I would say my rough estimated overall average is 2 videos a week, or about 8 to 10 videos a month is like my overall average. But this is like my 9th. Yeah, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. This is my 9th video in the last 17 days. My 9th video, might be even my 10th. At minimum, it's my 9th. It might be my 10th video in 17 days. This is only the second time since I've been on YouTube that I've done that many videos in that short a span of time. The one other time was May of last year, May of 2019. There was a period where I did about the same number of videos in that short span of time. But anyway, in the same way my very last video was primarily provoked by a comment by one of my commenters. In the last video was a commenter who went by the name Bob Dole. I'm going to highlight another comment of a commenter who gets it. If you remember when I first got on YouTube, I remember this. It was like some video I did within my first 10 videos on YouTube. I said that one of the things that gives me gratification is when I do a video that provokes a light bulb moment, what's generally known as an epiphany. I love doing videos where it makes somebody watching my video say, I get it. I get it. Like, you could say a video where I provide some knowledge, wisdom, insight, and advice that contributes to one of my listeners and viewers adding another piece to the puzzle. Another piece to the puzzle that makes them say, I get it now. I didn't get it before, but I get it now. And that's what's happened with some of my recent videos. With a few guys. This happened, I would say with most of my videos, there's always at least minimum 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 people that will write me and say, Alan, that video you did the other day, man, it explained a lot of things that I didn't understand before. Like, now I get it. Now I understand why women said this when they said it, or why they did this or failed to do this when they did this or failed to do something. Yeah, so anyway, I like this type of videos. But here's the thing to do with this video, the comment I want to highlight. I had a guy who goes by the name, I'm probably going to mispronounce it, Falak X. By looking at his YouTube page, I'm assuming he's Muslim from Nation of Islam, because I saw some of his videos. Yeah, I think he's either active in the Nation of Islam or used to be. Which is interesting. On a quick side note, my fiance has a background in the Nation of Islam. Man, matter of fact, her mother, my fiance's mother, is very active in the Nation of Islam in Atlanta. Yeah, here's the thing. remember when I came out with my book, Ooh Said Again. On the positive end, I got a lot of compliments to that book. I didn't get too many criticisms on that book, at least not to my memory. I got a lot of compliments on that book. But at the same time, a lot of people, well, here was one of the few minor criticisms I did receive when I came out with Ooh Said Again. I had at least a handful of guys that came at me with attitude like, Alan, I thought you said that Mode 1 is not representative of a seduction technique. I could have swore you said that Mode 1 was not representative of just a get laid quick scheme or seduction technique. But if you read Ooh Said Again, you make it obvious that Mode 1 is all about seducing women. So aren't you kind of contradicting yourself? I didn't have too many people come at me like that, but I had at least a handful of people come at me like that. It was a very small percentage, but yeah, at least roughly a handful or two guys came at me with attitude like, Alan, I could have swore when you came out with Mode 1, you said it is not representative of a seduction technique. But based on reading this more just elaborate version of Mode 1, that's what a lot of guys called Ooh Said Again. They called it just a more detailed and elaborate version of Mode 1. Aha. As Eddie Murphy said, it's the Jewish guy in Coming to America. I remember this Australian guy. First, on the first note, I remember this Australian guy. I mentioned this a couple times before. There was a guy who read my 2006 version of Mode 1. And if I'm not mistaken, unless he deleted it, it should be still in my Amazon reviews, in the Amazon review section. And that's what he essentially wrote. He said, a lot of guys are going to like this book, but he said a lot of guys are going to miss the point of this Mode 1 book, Alan Roger Currie's Mode 1 book. I'm paraphrasing his words. But essentially he said, Mode 1 is not a get laid quick scheme similar to what conventional PUAs propose and offer. He said that's not what Mode 1 is about. He said Mode 1 is not a seduction technique. Mode 1 is just a more confident, real, authentic, candid, and forthright style of verbal communication. That's what it is. But it in itself is not a seduction technique. And even though I've explained that to guys over the last, let's say, 20, 25 years, I would arguably say that probably 90% of the guys that I've explained that to do not really get that. They don't get that. I'll say one of two things. They either genuinely don't get it or they're acting like they don't get it. They either don't get it or they're playing a dumb role and acting like they don't get it. Which leads me to, I'm going to highlight two comments. One, as you heard me mention yesterday, I've been a little bit more active in the last couple of days on what's known as my community page. My community page. And I first posted Philique X's comment on my community page just yesterday. And so I'm going to read his comment, and then I'm going to read a comment by one of my more perceptive and intelligent commenters. He's commented quite a bit in my comment section. He goes by the name Ridley S. Ridley S. I'm going to read a reply comment he wrote. So, first, let me put on my reading glasses, and then I'm going to read Philique X's comment. Philique X writes, the difference between Mode 1 and everything else is with Mode 1, you use seduction after, in capitalized letters, after you find out if the woman is interested. And with everything else, you use seduction before you find out if the women are interested. It's totally useless to try and seduce a woman who isn't interested. You know what I need to do for moments like this? I need to create something that's the opposite of my insert dog face here. Because insert dog face here is for those people who make stupid comments, highly invalid comments, comments that defy logic and rationality. But then I need some, like during my Patreon live streams, I have a thing where I call it the kudos finger. I just point into the screen. I point like I'm pointing right now, and I call it the kudos finger. So for now, I'm going to just give Philippe X the kudos finger. That's the opposite of the dog face. Yeah, he hit it on the head, man. Well, speaking, I want to do a quick digression. I'm known for rambling and digression. I'm going to do a quick digression. I promise I'll come back to what I was just talking about. But somebody asked me, Alan, I've been asked this question before. They said, Alan, why don't you do public live streams? Why don't you do public live streams? Because as everybody knows, I only do Patreon exclusive live streams. Yeah, you have to be a Patreon, either at minimum a $5 Patreon subscriber and even more so a $10 Patreon subscriber to have access to my live streams. And people have asked me, including recently, Alan, why don't you do public live streams? The main thing they always say is that you can make a lot of money. If you do public live streams, man, you can make a killing in what's known as super chats. Now, granted, I have witnessed some people make some serious money. The first person I ever saw after I got on YouTube making money off of just live streams was O'Shea Duke Jackson. I remember sometimes I'd be on O'Shea Duke Jackson's channel and I would see him make anywhere from $200 to over $500 doing a live stream. And I would be like, that's some quick, easy money. Now, I don't know what percentage of money that YouTube takes. I'm sure YouTube takes a percentage of that money. It could be 20%, 25%, 30%, or higher. So I'm sure YouTube takes a percentage of that money. But still, I was like, And then probably the last person I saw making some serious cash was Donovan Sharp. I popped in on Donovan Sharp's live stream. This was probably like about maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. He was doing a live stream. He had over 1,000 people in his live stream. And I was looking at the super chats, man, he was racking up. In less than a 2-hour period, he cleared over like $1,000 in super chat money. So anyway, that's one of the things that people have tried to sell me on. They're like, Alan, like basically, you missing out on some money, man, by not doing public live streams. Well, I'm going to tell you one of the reasons why I personally choose not to. In most live streams, not all, but most, you always have a bunch of haters, critics, and trolls. Haters, critics, naysayers, and trolls. I ain't got time to deal with that shit. When I do my live streams, man, that's over half the reason why I do Patreon exclusive live streams. I don't want to deal with haters, critics, naysayers, or trolls. I don't have any of that on my Patreon live streams. None of that. No. If I do, it's less than 1% of the time. It's less than 1% of the time. Usually it's 0% of the time. I don't deal with haters, critics, naysayers, and trolls, and contrarians. Everybody I deal with in my live streams, my Patreon exclusive live streams, they're down with my Mode 1 approach. They're not trying to challenge it, undermine it, criticize it. They're down with the Mode 1 approach. And they want to be educated and advised. Let me repeat that. The people who participate in my Patreon exclusive live streams, they want to be educated and advised. See, a lot of people who do public live streams, they don't do them to educate and advise. They don't. There might be a handful of exceptions, but most people who do public live streams, they're looking to antagonize a group of people here on YouTube. They want to create controversy. They want to antagonize people. They want to talk shit about people. They enjoy those heated arguments, heated back and forths. Man, I don't want none of that shit. And then some people, some content creators on YouTube, they present you with free live streams, but then they try to obligate you. They bug you to death about sending them a Cash App donation, a PayPal donation, or to become a Patreon subscriber. You notice I don't do none of that shit. There's a difference between a donation and a paywall fee. If you want to mandate that people listen to your content, pay you money, then you need to have a paywall fee. You need to put all your content behind a paywall. Problem solved. But as I just alluded to, a lot of guys don't want to do that. Why? Well, not just men. I shouldn't say guys. Men and women. A lot of men and women don't want to do that because they know they want to antagonize people. You can't really effectively antagonize people if you do all your content behind a wall. Behind a paywall. You can't. Like, for example, if you're a black man who wants to generally antagonize black women, you ain't going to successfully achieve that if you're behind a paywall. If you're a black man on YouTube and you want to antagonize another black man, you can't successfully achieve that behind a paywall. You got to do a live stream that's free for the general public and hope that you get some Cash App donations, PayPal donations, super chats, and accumulate more Patreon subscribers. Like, if somebody's talking shit about me, but they doing it exclusive behind a paywall, I don't give a fuck. They ain't gonna get no response out of me. I don't give a fuck. Like, somebody told me recently that AMS took some jabs at me on Patreon exclusive videos. I don't care. I don't care. But you notice I do have a tendency to respond when people take jabs at me on some public content. So anyway, yeah, so wrapping up this digression, there's three people who tend to do public live streams. Number one, of course, is people who are looking to make quick money through super chats, and in addition to super chats, PayPal donations and Cash App donations. People looking to make quick money. That's number one, people who do YouTube general public live streams. Second people is people who got something controversial and or antagonistic to say. People who have something controversial and or antagonistic to say. They usually got something to say that involves them criticizing, harshly criticizing or insulting another YouTube creator or a group of YouTube creators. That's group number two. And that was a third group I had in mind. The money makers, the antagonizers. Oh, the third group would simply be people who are looking to grow their channel. That would be group number three, who do live streams. As people are looking, they feel like they have a low number of YouTube subscribers, and they simply are trying to use public live streams as a way of growing their channel. That's the three main groups of people who do public live streams. If I was to choose to do at some point in the future public live stream, it would be for category number one, to make some quick money. But right now, I'm good. Again, the drawback for me, from my observation of doing public live streams, is you got to always deal with a certain percentage of haters, critics, naysayers, contrarians, and trolls. I ain't got time, man. My time too valuable for that, man. I ain't got time for that shit. I hate dealing with it just in my comment sections on my videos. Yeah, so many times people come in my comment section, I'm just like, delete, 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 delete. People say, Alan, you just want an echo chamber. I did a whole episode where I said, hell yeah, I do. I don't deny that. You damn right I want an echo chamber. You damn right I want an echo chamber. So anyway, this concludes my entertaining digression away from my main topic that I was talking about. Again, yours truly is known. I've kind of calmed down in recent weeks and months, but I used to be known for my digressions. That's why I earned my nickname of my alter ego, Rambo. Rambo. Not Sylvester Stallone's R-A-M-B-O Rambo, but Alan Roger Currie, R-A-M-B-L-E, Rambo. But here is why, going back to my main topic, see, here's why Philique X comment is so important and relevant. Again, a lot of people thought when I came out with Who Said Again, it was just kind of like a continuation of Mo 1, or almost a more detailed and elaborate rewrite of Mo 1. No. Here's what you need to understand. And I mentioned this yesterday. Not yesterday, I'm sorry, 2 days ago. Mo 1, as the title of this video suggests, Mo 1 is not a seduction technique in and of itself. It is not. And a lot of people, when I've said that over the last 15, 20, 25 years, a lot of guys might answer like, yeah, right, Alan. Like, yeah, okay, sure, you're right. If you say so. They treat me like I'm trying to be basically disingenuous. But it's the truth. And Philique X got that. Ridley S, based on his response, he gets that. And I'm sure there's a higher percentage of my longtime followers that get that. It's really not. And again, I said this in my video on Monday. Here's the purpose of being Mo 1. Mo 1, among other things, is a verbal communication style that allows you to quickly and effectively identify the type of woman you're dealing with in terms of her either being on the same page as you or not being on the same page as you. That's what Mo 1 is for. Mo 1 is the framework that allows you to identify the specific archetype of woman you're dealing with, which would be either a reciprocator, a rejecter, a wholesome pretender, an erotic hypocrite, or a manipulative time waster. And then based on the response you get in the archetype they're in, then you know how to proceed with the rest of the conversation. For example, if I use Mo 1 and I identify a reciprocator, there ain't much to do. It just comes down to a matter of you inviting her over your place, or you invite yourself over to her place, and y'all two fuck, because she's a reciprocator. I mean, it ain't much to say. Once you Mo 1 with a reciprocator, it's really not much to say after that. You just identify the time and the place for y'all to get busy, basically. That's all that happens when you're talking to a reciprocator. With a rejecter, if you use Mo 1 to identify that a woman's rejecter, plain and simple, you leave her the fuck alone. You end the conversation, or allow her to end the conversation, and you leave her the fuck alone and move on to the next woman. And see, let's pause right there. See, this is the difference between me and most, if not all, conventional PUAs. See, a lot of conventional PUAs will have you believe that, oh, she's not really a rejecter. She's really just playing hard to get. She's really just resisting you. And if you buy my second book and my third book and my second DVD and my second CD, I'll teach you all the magnificent techniques that will turn that rejecter into a reciprocator. Bullshit. You can't turn, I say this in my book emphatically, you cannot turn a rejecter into a reciprocator. I say that in the introduction of my 1999 ebook version of Mo 1, my 2006 version of Mo 1, and all the subsequent versions of Mo 1. You cannot turn a rejecter into a reciprocator. Because if you could, then that means you're not dealing with a rejecter to begin with. Plain and simple. You're not dealing with a rejecter to begin. If you can convert a rejecter into a reciprocator, then she wasn't a rejecter in the first place. She was either a wholesome pretender or an erotic hypocrite. She wasn't no rejecter. You cannot convert a rejecter into a reciprocator. You can convert a woman who's pretending to be a rejecter, which would be a wholesome pretender and erotic hypocrite. But a genuine rejecter, you cannot convert a rejecter into being a reciprocator. It's impossible. It's not just unlikely, it's impossible. Period. So when you use Mode 1 to identify a rejecter, the next step is to allow her to end the conversation, or you end the conversation, you leave her the fuck alone. Next up would be manipulative time waster. This again is where I'm going to attack conventional PUAs. See, this is where you're going to get tripped up if you try to follow the average conventional PUA's advice, because their techniques and methodologies are not really conducive to identifying manipulative time wasters. They're not. I can't really think of anybody who's an exception. Just about all conventional PUAs, they do not promote conversation styles that allow you to quickly and effectively identify a manipulative time waster. Mode 1, I will say this emphatically, Mode 1 is the absolute best conversation method out there that allows you to quickly and effectively identify a manipulative time waster. It's better than anybody else's method out there. I'll put money on it. I'll put money on it. It ain't no method out there better. Now, when it comes to getting laid, I've said many times, if you would ask me, how does Mode 1 stack up to other methods of getting laid? When it comes solely and specifically to the objective of getting laid, there's a lot of methods out there that are reasonably effective towards helping men get laid. So I would never say Mode 1 is the absolute best method for helping men get laid. But when it comes to helping men quickly and identify time, matter of fact, I had a client just say that today. Literally. I was doing a Skype consultation earlier today, and my client said that. He said of all the methods he's used, and he's used a few different ones, he said, Alan, Mode 1 is without question the best method I've ever used for helping me quickly and effectively identify manipulative time waster types. Manipulative time. There's no method out there better than Mode 1. None. I dare anybody to say there is. I literally dare somebody to say there is. But yeah, that's the beauty of Mode 1, man. If you're dealing with a woman who's some variation of a manipulative time waster, if you read my book, Possibility of Sex, you know I got at least there's approximately 4 different variations of manipulative time wasters. Some that are seeking flattering and entertaining conversation from you. Some that are seeking some that are seeking flattery and a self-esteem and ego boost. Flattery and a self-esteem and ego boost. That would be manipulative time waster number 1. Number 2 would be those who are seeking purely platonic male social companionship from you without just outright saying that. Entertaining conversation and purely platonic male social companionship. The third type of manipulative time waster is those that seek financial and non-financial favors from you. And the fourth is those that are looking for an emotionally empathetic listening ear. See, when you indirect, either one of two things is going to happen when you use indirect verbal game. You either A, not going to be able to identify a manipulative time waster at all, or B, you'll be able to identify them, but it's going to be at a much slower pace than you would if you were Mode 1. If you use Mode 2 or Mode 3, you might be able to identify manipulative time wasters, but it's going to take you much, much, much longer than it would if you were Mode 1. Like, I know how to identify a manipulative time waster on average within 5 minutes or less. I'd say at maximum 10 minutes or less. Most of the time, 5 minutes or less. And now we get to seduction. Seduction is only applicable once you've identified a wholesome pretender and or an erotic hypocrite. That's where verbal seduction and erotic dirty talk comes into play, which is what Who Said Again is about. only time you really need to go into what I refer to as seduction mode is once you've identified a woman who's either a wholesome pretender or an erotic hypocrite. Because see, here's what most guys don't get. 3 of the 5 archetypes you don't need to seduce. You either can't seduce or you don't need to. You either can't seduce or you don't need to. Rejectors and manipulative time wasters, you can't seduce them. It's literally impossible. Seriously, it's literally impossible. You're never, ever, ever going to seduce a woman who's a genuine rejecter. Never, ever. That would be a waste of your fucking time. And I would say 99% chance you're not going to seduce a manipulative time waster. The only 1% chance you have of getting a manipulative time waster in bed is if she's basically what I call a covert call girl and you offers her some money. She might fuck you for some money, but that's not seduction. That's financial negotiation. That's not seduction. That's financial negotiation. And reciprocators, there's no need to attempt to seduce a reciprocator because she's already interested in fucking. She's already down to fuck. So in using sales terminology, if you were to try to seduce a reciprocator, you would be guilty of what's known as overselling. Overselling. If anybody's ever worked in sales, your sales manager has probably told you about the concept of overselling. Yeah, sometimes you can be guilty of like I remember I was guilty of that at least once when I sold cars. There was a 6-month period. I used to be a car salesman. Actually, in 2002, I worked in car sales for about 6 months. And I remember at least minimum one time when my sales manager came out and told me, he said, "Alan, what are you doing?" I said, "What?" He said, "This customer, you're overselling them. They're ready to buy the car and you're overselling them." Overselling in simple terms means you're trying to persuade someone to buy a product or service when they're already interested in buying the product or service. That means you're overselling. Anytime you're, say, selling a product or service and a person has pretty much made it clear that they're already interested in buying that product or service and you still are in persuasion mode, sales mode, that means you're overselling. And you have the potential to turn somebody off because it makes you look like you're desperate for them to buy that product or service. That's the detriment of overselling. When you oversell somebody on something, it makes it look like you're desperate for them to buy that product or service, which has the potential to turn them off. Anytime you're in sales, you're going to run across 3 types of customers. Those that are 100% already interested in your product or service. Those that have a 0% interest in your product or service, meaning you no matter how great of a salesman you are, you ain't gonna change their mind, at least not at any point in the near future. And then right in the middle, somewhere in the middle between those 2 extremes, would be the people who are on the fence. That's where your salesmanship skills really come into play, is when you're talking to customers who are on the fence. Basically what it means when someone's on the fence is that on the positive end, they're curious and intrigued about your product or service. They're curious and intrigued, but they're not convinced that whatever it is you're selling is worth their time investment and or their money investment. They're not yet convinced that what you're offering is worth their time investment and or their financial investment. That's what it means when somebody's on the fence. And I always compare sales and seduction to each other. They're kind of like first cousins to each other, sales and seduction. Again, going back to seduction, you don't need to seduce a reciprocator. She's already sold on the idea of fucking you, giving you some pussy. She's already sold. So if you go into seduction mode with a reciprocator, you're going to be guilty of overselling her. And she's going to potentially lose interest because she's going to think you're desperate for female sexual companionship. So you don't want to oversell a reciprocator. Again, a rejector and a manipulative time waster, you're wasting your time trying to seduce those 2 archetypes. You're wasting your time. You ain't going to change their mind, at least not at any time in the near future. You ain't going to change their mind. The only women that need to be seduced is the wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites. And that's what, again, that's the whole motivation for me writing my book and publishing my book, Who Said Again. It's about the seduction of wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites. That's when you apply your verbal seduction skills that you learned from me. That's when you apply your erotic dirty talk skills that you learned from me. The king of verbal seduction and kinky erotic dirty talk. But yeah, for 3 of the 5 archetypes, your seduction skills, your verbal seduction skills and erotic dirty talk skills are irrelevant and useless. For 3 of the 5 archetypes, they're irrelevant and useless. And a lot of guys don't get that. A lot of guys don't get that. Falak X gets it. And one more comment I want to read is a comment on my community page by the frequent commenter of mine, Ridley S. Ridley S. Now I'm going to skip over his first 3 paragraphs. He got 4 paragraphs total. I'm going to skip over 3 of them because he's basically just reiterating what Falik X said. But I'm going to read what he says in his 4th and final paragraph. He says, if you think about this even more, mode 1 is probably the only way not to leave pussy on the table. If you remember, that's one of the criticisms of alpha male strategies and really a lot of guys who promote indirect verbal game. One of their criticisms of mode 1 is that if you exhibit mode 1 behavior, you're going to, quote unquote, leave pussy on the table, which I've always argued is not true. And Ridley S. basically points it out. He said mode 1 is probably the only way not to leave pussy on the table. By using mode 1 and understanding each of the 5 possible responses, a few things are true. 1, by clearly stating your objective, you are able to identify the women who want the same thing. I would add in quickly identify. You are able to quickly identify the women who want the same thing as you, i.e. the reciprocators. The same women that might lose interest with an indirect approach. And see, man, let me touch on this for a second. I pointed this out before. A lot of guys, indirect guys will try to say, if you're too direct with women, you might turn them off or cause them to lose interest in having sex with you. What they don't realize is just the opposite is just as true, if not even more. Remember, again, I mentioned in my last video that I had conversations / informal survey type interviews with 15 women in Los Angeles in November of 2018. That's what these women were telling me. Without getting into too long a story, that's what these women said. They basically told me in one way or another, they said, if my interest was short-term non-monogamous casual sex, and a guy was to approach me and start using indirect verbal game and trying to make me believe he was interested in, say, a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, they were like, I would be turned off. All these women said that. They said, I would be turned off. I would lose interest. They was basically like, if my interest is casual sex and a guy is not bold, direct, alpha, to the point, then more than likely, I'm going to lose interest. That's what these women told me. They was like, I'm going to lose interest. And in so many words, they were basically saying, if my interest is casual sex, I want a guy to be mode 1. That's what they basically said in so many words. They were like, if I meet a guy and my interest in him is casual sex as opposed to a long-term relationship, I want that guy to be mode 1. Because if he's mode 2 or mode 3, 90 to 99% chance, I'm going to lose interest. And anyway, that's what Ridley S. was just explaining in his response. Let me continue. More importantly, since you understand each of the 5 possible responses, you're not going to mistake a wholesome pretender or erotic hypocrite for being a rejecter and give up on her. I'm guessing a lot of men leave lots of pussy on the table by thinking a woman is rejecting them when in reality, she's resisting or testing them. See, I need to come up with some creative for the opposite of the dog face. For now, I just go with the kudos finger that I do in my Patreon live stream. That's the opposite of the dog face. Really S gets the kudos face. That's the whole basis. I ain't gonna say the whole basis, but that's the primary basis of my one-on-one face-to-face coaching session. If anybody's done one-on-one face-to-face coaching with me, that last part that Really S said is actually what's included in my 8-hour. When I do an 8-hour one-on-one face-to-face coach, I have 3 one-on-one face-to-face coaching sessions. I do a 4-hour session, an 8-hour session, and a 14-hour session. The 4-hour session is always covered in one day. The 8-hour session can be covered in 1 day or 2 days. And the 14-hour session is covered over 3 days. When I do that, I don't do this with the 4-hour session, but when I do an 8-hour session or a 14-hour session, what I do is I do role play. I have my client do role play with a female assistant of mine. And that's the main basis of my role play, is I help men distinguish. Because see, he hit it on the mark. See, with a lot of men, here's the confusion a lot of men, the 2 mistakes that a lot of men make. The average man in society tends to mistake a manipulative time waster for being a reciprocator. That's the #1 mistake that the average man in society makes. They mistake manipulative time wasters for being reciprocators. And in their partial defense, a lot of women who are manipulative time wasters are exceptionally good at giving men the misleading impression that they either are reciprocators or are very much on the verge of being a reciprocator. Like, I did a Patreon exclusive video about what I call the cock teasing manipulative time waster. Man, I had a client I did a one-on-one face-to-face coaching session with. He was totally fooled. But he learned the importance of verbal communication skills. Because when he was relying just on her body language, he couldn't distinguish between her being a manipulative time waster and a reciprocator. He was almost certain that she was a reciprocator. So that's the one mistake in terms of my 5 archetypes that most men make. A lot of men confuse manipulative time wasters for being reciprocators. That's what most guys who follow conventional PUAs, that's without question the #1 mistake they make. Without question. Second most mistake is related to what Really S said. The second biggest mistake men make is they confuse wholesome pretenders and even more so erotic hypocrites for being rejectors. They confuse wholesome pretenders and even more so erotic hypocrites for being rejectors. Like, if you read or listen to Verbal Seduction story #1 in Who Said It Again, that's a mistake I almost made. That's a mistake I almost made. I can name at least 2 of my 6 verbal seduction stories where I came close to making a mistake. Verbal seduction story #1 and verbal seduction story #5. Verbal seduction story #1 and verbal seduction story #5. That's the mistake I almost made. I didn't make the mistake, but I almost made that mistake in both of those instances. I almost made the mistake of confusing an erotic hypocrite for being a rejecter. Again, this is why I'm a professional dating coach. This is why I earn a 6-figure salary. This is why my nickname is the King of Verbal Seduction and Kinky Erotic Dirty Talk. And this is why my other nickname is the Godfather of Direct Verbal Game. I know my shit.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. You're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, you're the fucking king. Yes.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king.
of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
But the king would fuck me really good.
Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.
I have to agree with you on the communication piece, because I actually did take a session with Alan Roger Currie, and he gave me a line that I did not think was going to work, and it worked. And I was like, what the fuck?
Oh my God!
Curry guys, man, he's the master. He's the master of the verbal seduction. He got that communication piece down pat.
It really worked. It just simply worked, and I just didn't think it was going to work at all.
Some guys have natural handles. Some guys have a better natural shot, but you can always improve your shot. And sex is damn sure something you can fucking learn. Look, dude, you want to learn how to talk better? I'm hiring Alan Roger Currie to get my dirty talk game on, because it's always been something I want to get better at.
Verbal seduction, man. I'm like, clearly, this guy's the Michael Jordan of seduction. Like, come on now.